Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I am your host. And in today's episode, I'm talking with Daniel Althaus from Althaus Landscape Designs. Daniel runs a landscape design business. He's based in Ballarat but works around Victoria and Melbourne, specifically creating predominantly native habitat gardens. And it was great to talk to him because he's only been in business for 12 months and in the industry for 4 or 5 years. But it's awesome to hear from someone who's actually a creative person and how they've found their way into the industry and the way he's starting his business as well. So it was interesting to hear how he talked about it early on, how it can be tricky to find your way, choosing an occupation when you are a creative person and finding something that fits your creativity. So it's good to see that he has found that. And he's also made use of mentors within the industry as well to help accelerate their business. And he's got a couple of good ones, which he speaks about in this chat. And he also talks about how he came to work with those mentors and how when you knock on enough doors, some of them are going to open. So he's all about taking opportunities and not being afraid to ask for help or ask for advice, because the worst thing can happen, you can say no. So there's plenty of good bits of advice in this chat from Daniel. So hopefully you enjoy this chat with Daniel Althaus. Daniel, thank you very much for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast. My first question for you is, how did you start in the industry?
Awesome. Thanks, Joel. Thanks for having me. Also, just want to note your dapper jacket that you've put on for the occasion. So thank you for that.
You're a VIP.
Look, Joel, I've only been in the industry a pretty short amount of time, to be honest. I think it's been 12 months. We're about to tick over for the actual for my business. And I've been in the industry for about 4 or 5 years. But I think I've always kind of had the ingredients to be in this industry or doing something creative like this. I think I pretty much popped out with a paintbrush in my hand or a pen in my hand. So yeah, always been a creative kind of guy. And I think in the early stages of my life, I mean, I don't know about you, Joel, but being a creative and trying to find your way is it can be pretty tricky when it comes to finding an occupation that kind of suits you. So I had sort of, dabbled in the music industry. I had art galleries. I did sort of lots of different random stuff. And I think you just crave that stability, I guess. So in my family, there's pretty much everyone that is like my dad, my grandfather, we're all in the military. So that was definitely on my cards, and so I decided to pull the ripcord there and join the military. And I was in the army for a good couple of years, did the training and all that kind of stuff, and then unfortunately got a diagnosis, cancer, a stage 4 malignant melanoma. So I had a couple of surgeries and had my right lung removed and a bowel resection. It was a whole thing. So, but coming out of that, the army ended up giving me an opportunity to basically say, on this medical discharge, you can kind of pick again. So they were going to, fund a course. Now, I know this is a landscaping podcast, and I probably derailed a whole lot of stuff. But,
No, that's how you started.
yeah. So I ended up picking my brain and doing one of those what's those like personality things where you're trying to find your occupation, and because I was creative and yeah, all those things, it popped out to be a teacher. So I started going down that route, and quickly learnt that being a teacher didn't necessarily mean being creative. And I actually met my partner while I was teaching, and that kind of leads into the industry now. And so her mum is a landscaper. She does maintenance, landscaping design, all that kind of stuff. And so my partner kind of said to me, she's like, clearly you're unhappy in the teaching industry, and she's like, why don't you go and work for my mum? And I kind of said, that sounds horrible. Like working for your mother-in-law. I said, oh, yeah, like I love Len, my mother-in-law, but I think it was just a little too close to home. And I think I just said, I'll give it a minute. So yeah, a month went by and I kind of went, maybe I need something else. Maybe I just need something else. And so I bit the bullet, and the first job that she got me onto was patching up a leaky pond and kind of putting all the plants back in, and yeah, using aquatic plants and blending it into the garden. And even though it was a unique little start, I guess. And but from that point, I think it just hit me. It hit me like a train. Like I can potentially create art pieces with living things. And I think it knocked me for six, and I was hooked. So I then just started working with Len from Be Inspired Gardens, doing maintenance. And I know, Joel, you've had many people on before that have always said maintenance and nursery work, that's where you start in this industry. It's just like, if you want to learn things, that's it. And that's what I did. So Len, she went to Burnley. She was one of those, I call it the silent assassins. So she went to Burnley with like Ian Barker and that kind of caliber of people. Yeah, so I got to pick her brain on a daily basis on where does that grow? Why does that grow like that? Soil prep, do you know what I mean? Like all these things about plants, natives, non-natives, everything. So I started building up a bit of a bank on plants and how to create with them, I guess. So from that, yeah, I ended up doing some design work for Len, and being able to design a garden and then jump in the garden and create it pretty much then and there. It was like drugs, to be honest. It was just unreal. Yeah, creating those curves that you've drawn on paper and all that kind of stuff. It was just and then not only that, but so you've done the garden and then you come back in 2 years and you just see like this is insane. So yeah, we just hooked from that element, I think. And so I ended up tagging in and doing a Cert 4 in landscape design in Fairfield at Melbourne Polytechnic. So I was working during the day in Melbourne and then doing the night course. So yeah, then I mean I'm a bit of a computer nerd, so I just went headfirst into the AutoCAD, all the programs, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so from there I was lucky enough to be introduced to a guy called Emil Hunt, who's the associate for Paul Bangay. Yeah, so he became kind of like my technical mentor, I guess.
He's an awesome.
Um, yeah, he's a gun. Yeah, so it was unreal to sort of have both Len and someone like Emil essentially straight off the bat, very early on, being my, I guess, my mentor. And it's something that I kind of really chased early on because I guess I just didn't have any mentors early on in my life. And yeah, so it kind of started that path, I guess. And then from there, my partner and I ended up moving to Ballarat. And that was the kind of start of Althaus Landscape Designs, where I thought, I reckon I can kind of go out on my own. So there were definitely some moments where, yeah, you're in a new city, you start a new business, and I've never started a business before in my life. Do you know what I mean? So I was doing letterbox drops and all this kind of stuff, trying to be creative, and so I did that. Got a few clients here and there, and it was kind of starting. And then I was still enrolled in TAFE back in Melbourne, and they kind of said, "Hey, we're putting expressions of interest for MIFGS, the Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show. And ever since I started in the industry with Len, I was like, I want that. That's awesome. It's essentially having an art gallery for gardens. It's just, to me, that's what's up. So the moment I got that email, I was like, both feet in, we're going to do this. And so that's pretty much what happened. So yeah, started down that journey of MIFGS, and I mean, that's where I got to properly meet you and a whole bunch of industry weapons. Yeah, Dan and yeah, a whole bunch of cool cats. So yeah, and look, since MIFGS, it's just kind of gone like this. It's been really good. And it was awesome to build something like what I built and have such a good reception from the general public. It was a lot of fun to build, and yeah, it was like I said, it's just an art gallery. Do you know what I mean? Like for designers and things like that. So yeah, so I guess that's where we're at now.
And when you were first talking about what you started doing, you said there's something about an art gallery. Like, did you do paintings or something that you exhibited there?
Yeah. So I started with, and this was way back when, sort of even 17, 18 into my sort of early 20s. It was sort of oil on canvas. Yeah, a few bits and pieces like that, some sculptures and things like that, just to try and make some money. And
Have you done any hand drawings with your designs?
Yeah. I always start with that. I put it in CAD. I do like the main sort of structures where the house is and all that kind of stuff. And I put it on a big board and I just kind of just go nuts because I feel like that's where my strengths kind of lie, is just like I can see it in my mind, and yeah, putting that on paper is yeah, I guess why I kind of started in this. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
And then what do you present to the client? Do you send them like a CAD file, a CAD presentation, or do you send a hand drawing?
Yeah, look, it's a CAD drawing. It's definitely a CAD drawing what I send to them. But so I use a program called Land Effects, and I mentioned before, yeah, I'm a bit of a computer nerd. But so Land Effects, it's an like a skin over the top of AutoCAD. So it's geared towards landscaping and all that kind of stuff. Spits out planting schedules and all that kind of stuff. Super easy. But one thing it does do is kind of imports into things like SketchUp, Twinmotion, other rendering programs and stuff. So I use a multitude of programs to create sort of a feel for the garden. I'm still toying with the way I present, because I don't like, it's like, yeah, you're done, and then you kind of go, okay, cool, guys, or here's your file. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, no, but I want to sit with you and I want to walk you through what's been in my head for the last month. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's talk about this. And I think that's one of the big things I'm doing at the moment is a lot of the properties I'm doing are acreage at the moment, because being in Ballarat, that's kind of the style that I'm kind of targeting. And yeah, being able to sort of sit down with clients now and walk them through, like, I put a sauna in the garden the other day, and there's like a yoga pad at the back, and just like making it immersing them in their garden before they've even started. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's such a beautiful thing having that connection with clients. It's something I really love doing, is kind of getting that brief and trying to extract as much information as you can to create their dream garden, but also your piece of art. Do you know what I mean? And it's a challenging thing to do, but it's I think it's why I love my job so much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's such an awesome way to do it, presenting it to them in person, because you know what everything is on the design, but they may have never seen what a landscape design looks like in their life. So There's
Mm.
and it'd be very overwhelming when you're looking at all the different things that you would have included. So they might think, I don't know what that is, and then they move on to something else they don't know what it is. So you could be there and explaining that to them. I think that's
Yeah,
a great idea.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where kind of 3D renders and things come into play too. And I think it's tricky selling 3D renders to people because they're just like, for an extra grand, like why would I want some pretty pictures? Do you know what I mean? But I think having that is such a it's a it can really immerse someone that can't visualize top down plans in their garden that they're potentially going to spend 150, 200 grand on. Do you know what I mean? So if you're talking about a grand on like a project like that, you're like, guys, come on, like it's worth it. And yeah, and I hate being a salesman, but sometimes you kind of have to be a bit of a salesman to kind of make them see the bigger picture and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's an interesting thing to navigate, especially in the early stages of I guess my career and the business is learning what to do and what not to do, or thinking, oh, that doesn't quite work with my clients. Maybe I need to navigate it around and do some other things to tailor make everything, because that's essentially what we're selling. Do you know what I mean? Like these, everything's tailor made to you. That's it. Do you know what I mean? So, and I think that's why it's kind of hard at the moment working out with clients what's the best way to do things, because every client's different. Do you know what I mean? So someone might just be like, yeah, I know how to read a thing. Just send it through to me and we'll have a chat later. Others are like, no, man, walk me through it. I want to feel this. Do you know what I mean? I spent 5 grand on a design. Like, walk me through it. I want to be in this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's yeah, it's definitely interesting navigating those relationships in those early stages of a business.
And do you do the 3D yourself when they're after it, or do you sub it out?
Yeah, look, I think initially I was definitely doing everything myself. And I mean, I love that kind of stuff, but I log my hours. If I'm sitting in this chair, there's a timer going. Do you know what I mean? So, and when you start seeing, oh, that's 10 hours or 15 hours sitting here doing a render, because people don't understand that, like, yeah, sure, you might get just a picture, but in my computer, that's like a fully immersive, like I can go down and I'm planting like little daisies or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like, and you're doing all those things, or placing material on top of metal structures and blah, blah, do you know what I mean? Like it's a high detailed model. And sure, I'm going click like that, but I'm walking around the model going click, 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 do you know what I mean? So, but I think, and I've spoken to a few people, yeah, and they're kind of outsourcing a lot of that 3D stuff. I know I've spoken to you a bit about it, but yeah, it's a tricky one because it's like I kind of enjoy it, so it's a fine balance of, do I want to make money, or do you know what I mean? So it can be a bit tricky. So yeah.
And what programs do you use for it? Is that the twin motion you were talking about before?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I'm not sure if you know. It's called Unreal Engine. I think
Yep.
they use it for like gaming and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But it's one of the main ones that I use at the moment, just because it's so realistic. Like it really is. If you, and admittedly, like there's a few steps to it. You know what I mean? Like you got to go through CAD and then through SketchUp, build the model in SketchUp, and send it to Twin Motion, sorry. And it's a process, man. Like it's but like I said, I'm a nerd. If you got the time, you can you can jump on in and you can lose days in that stuff. Like it's pretty full on. So yeah.
What was the course you said you studied at Melbourne Polytechnic?
So I did a Cert 4 in landscape design.
Yep. So do they teach you
So
anything about business for that? Like how to work out what you should charge or anything like that?
yeah, they do a few elements of that. There's a cost of project element, and there was, I can't remember the name of the thing, but they do like a condensed version of kind of how to run a business. And although it's not necessarily industry specific, that course, as in like that subject, sorry, it's it's really important, I think, for people like myself who have never run a business before to have that information, because it's like sitting here and trying to look at BAS and it's like I don't know what BAS is. Like, do you know what I mean? Or paying your taxes is completely different for a business or a sole trader or a company. Do you know what I mean? Like, you got to know all that stuff. There's a lot of mixed information out there as well, I think. So unless you're making good coin and you can just throw money at a accountant, or you're good at that, yeah, you kind of got to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you end up running at a loss. It can be quite costly.
Yeah, there's some
So
things you can just make up as you go, but that's not one of them. That's
definitely not one of them. It's definitely not one of them. So, and I think when I first started, and this comes back to mentorship as well, I think having those people in your corner to go, hey, before you start getting this big, while you're here, lay those foundations. It's so important, and I can't stress it enough for anyone that's starting a new business is to lay those foundations of even things like templates and yeah, invoice templates, quote, like fee proposal templates, like all those things. So it's just like if someone contacts you, you send this. If this happens, you send that. So you're not sitting there hours and hours, hours late at night, missing your kid's football game or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? Like doing all that nonsense stuff. So yeah, and I think that, like I said, comes back to kind of mentorship and having kind of Len from Memphis Gardens kind of, yeah, tap me on the shoulder and kind of show me how kind of the back end of a business works and all that kind of stuff, and that's super important.
Have you ever thought of doing having like maintenance or anything else as part of your business, or it's just going to be purely design?
It's tricky at the moment, Joel, because being a design only company, a lot of clients I'm finding, especially at the moment, they're kind of holding their wallets pretty close to their back pocket. So they're kind of going, yeah, we might get a concept design and then we'll just build it ourselves. And it's like, yeah, go ahead. Like that's awesome. But for me and sort of like my promotional element of my business, it's hard to then follow that down the track and then provide sort of maintenance down the track. And then, do you know what I mean? Like, so it's harder to kind of do those things. So I think, yeah, there's only sort of like a handful of designs that I've done that are fully built, fully established, and things like that. So I'd love to grow to a point where I could potentially put on a maintenance team or do something like that. But I think at this early stage, it's probably a little bit too soon to kind of grab that.
And do you
So
see yourself putting on another designer in the future?
yeah, look, I've already been in contact with a few people just to kind of handle some of the drafting work, because that's, if someone can kind of take away those, I guess, grunt hours where you're sitting here drawing lines and I can be on the phone or at sort of talking to clients or doing whatever, I think that's a big help. But yeah, like I said before, I'm still trying to get to that point. I think I'm close there, but we're not quite there yet. But I'd love to start growing pretty soon. But yeah, I don't know. We're going to see.
Yep. And how did you come about getting Emil as your mentor?
It's funny. It was through a friend of a friend, but I think when it comes to mentors in my stage of life, like I'm 36 now, I'm sort of going, all right, let's just pull the trigger on stuff. Let's knock on people's door. If I need help, I want to talk to people, and I want to, because most people know more than me. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it was. I was talking to a friend. he knew Emil, and I said, awesome, let's meet it up. Let's do it. Same with sort of Peter Donegan. Peter Donegan's been in my corner for a little while now, before MIFGS. And it was actually because of your podcast. I heard the podcast with him, and like he's doing castles, man. Like he's doing castles. That blew my mind. I was like, and to think what I was doing here in Australia on like a residential setting, and hearing him talk about his walk and his story and what he's done. And I finished listening to your podcast, and I was like, I got to hit this guy up, man. Like, and that's what I did. And Peter's so generous with his time always. So in the whole lead up for MIFGS, yeah, we just have video chats just like this, and yeah, walk me through certain elements of show gardens, and I think I had an acreage garden that I was kind of stumped with. So I just teed up a conversation with him, and he kind of brought me back to the design principles. Do you know what I mean? And it was just, sometimes I got to pinch myself that you're like, yeah, you're talking to these kind of guys, and what they do as a day to day is, it just blows my mind. You know what I mean?
Very
like,
generous and also very wise as well, I found.
very smart man.
I would
Very
never
smart
tell him
man.
that, so don't tell him.
Yeah, yeah. We need to edit this part out so he doesn't
Yeah.
hear it. I
It
think he's
won't
going
be
to get a big head.
But that's like the two kind of mentors that you got. They're two pretty decent ones to have too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I was really kind of, yeah, just determined, because I think for the longest time, like I said, I've not had a mentor, and I craved that. And I think when you start knocking on people's doors, there's going to be doors that open. And I feel very, very blessed to have the people that I do in the corner that I do. Like it's like the show garden that I did wouldn't be the show garden that it is without all of those people behind me. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, even Nadia from Platalobium, we try and touch base every now and again. Do you know what I mean? Like just people like that, just kind of connecting through the industry, and kind of just checking in, because I guess as a designer, I mean, I don't know how you feel, Joel, but it can be a lonely game, kind of running your own business, and like it's just me, man. Like, and more often than not, it's in this office. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, with all my friends out here, so so it's tricky, and I think for the sake of your own mental health, and not only your mental health, but so you stay sharp in the industry. So people like Peter can go, hey mate, remember your design principles. Think about space. Think about planting placement. Think about the rooms that you want to create, lines of sight. Do you know what I mean? Like all those things that are imperative to a design, and making it a designed garden. And it's like, you kind of know that stuff, but it takes your mentor just to be like, tap, tap, tap. Hey, mate, you know this stuff. Come on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's I found, yeah, it's super important to have something like that in your corner.
Yeah, and if you see someone who you think you want to get some advice from, and then you reach out to them, the worst thing that could possibly happen is they say no, and then you've got end up with the same result as if you didn't ask them.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think a lot of people kind of are scared to take that leap, because they're like, oh, I don't want to get rejected, and I think it's a human thing, right? Like we all don't want to be rejected. We want to be part of something, and yeah, I think it's hard to kind of push past that, but I think once you do, you kind of reap the rewards. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
yeah.
So when did you find out you got accepted into MIFGS, into the Achievable Gardens?
Yeah, look, they kind of, I think it was like November, December. And I kind of like, it's tricky because it's not a lot of time to kind of grab and grow plants in that space of time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I put my design into Melbourne Polytechnic, and I just thought, stuff it. I'm just going to send it here. I'm just going to go out and get all the plants, or I'm going to like start collecting a bunch of things and do it now. Otherwise, because it'd be January, I think it was, before they actually said, "Yeah, you're in or you're not."
Right.
So I just, over Christmas and over that period of time, I just thought, well, if I don't get in, I'll just use the plants in my own garden or something like that. I'll sell them or use them in a client's garden or something along those lines. So yeah, and I think from December till when MIFGS happened, it was yeah, it's a pretty stressful time. Yeah, organizing all that, trying to get sponsors, trying to, as you know, Joel, trying to run around, run a business. My partner was pregnant at the time, so yeah, we ended up having the baby 2 weeks before MIFGS, 3 weeks before MIFGS. Madness, Joel. But yeah, hot tip: don't do that.
One of my sons is born on the 23rd of March, so that's always the same around.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't do anything that year though, thankfully.
Yeah.
And then what was the experience like being there? Like, was it everything you thought it would be, or was it more harder to be?
I think building a show garden is, once you kind of realize that it's not an actual garden, it's a set, your mind changes about how you build it and how you construct things. So yeah, it's tricky. And look, we spent, I was doing trips from Ballarat to the TAFE in Fairfield, back and forth, building the walls, doing the stenciling for the circle and all that kind of stuff. And I remember getting sort of like halfway through the big structures and like the walkway and all that kind of stuff, and thinking to myself, this is like, I know how to build gardens, but this is not a garden. Do you know what I mean? Like it's completely different. So but in saying that, it was extremely rewarding. Like the team at Melbourne Polytechnic, they are just unreal, like wealth of knowledge. Some of them just coming on their weekends, you know what I mean? Like just, again, really generous with their time. And the whole time of MIFGS, there's just guys in there from Melbourne Polytechnic just crushing it. And I think as the students, we wouldn't have been able to complete a garden like that without having tutors and apprentices and bits and pieces like that. So, but yeah, it was interesting kind of building it. And then I guess you're the front man. Do you know what I mean? Like you got to be up there talking to people and explaining your garden and I think, yeah, having the baby as well at that period of time when I was super sleep deprived, I've just spent 9 days building it, and then another 5 days talking to the public every day. It's you come out of it pretty exhausted. But yeah, like I'm currently doing a few client gardens from MIFGS, so
Yeah, awesome.
it's kind of worth it. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, I don't know how you felt about the show garden, but pulling it down, man, like that was, I just wanted to walk away. Someone else do it. I don't want to pull this down because you've created such a beautiful thing, whether other people like it or not. It's like you've created something that you are so proud of,
Yep.
and other people love, and it almost, by the end of it, just had this life of its own. Do you know what I mean? And I guess, I mean, you saw my garden. Do you know what I mean? It was designed to be a habitat garden, and we were finding frogs in there and
Oh, really?
bees and yeah, it was insane. So kind of pulling that apart, you just like, oh, this sucks, man. Like, so yeah, but it was a roller coaster, man. Like you know exactly what it's like. So and your garden was, what was, it was like 10 by 10 or something.
10 by 13 was.
10 by 13. See, and ours were like 5 by 4. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, crazy ride. But I think I've got the itch. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's funny though, because we've done a lot of the boutique size ones to 5 by 5.
Yeah,
And when we were doing them, we used every single minute that we had, and when we're doing a 10 by 13, we use every single minute that we have. So regardless of what size you've got, you're working flat out the whole time. You just make
absolutely.
it in space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, in the smaller ones, you've got less space to move around and you're trying to like design every little element of that space and design it really well and smart. And it just, it's tough. No matter what size you do, whether it's Charlie Albone with some shipping containers or Peter Donegan with some massive rocks or me with some circles. Do you know what I mean? Like it's tough, man. Like it's a challenge, and I think that's the fun of it. Do you know what I mean? Like it's if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't be as satisfying either. But I've said it a few times, but I find doing the smaller gardens harder to design because you got to get the scale and the proportions all right. Whole
absolutely,
space. You're
absolutely,
wanting to show off so much stuff, but
yeah.
can't put everything in.
And I feel like you try and dump a whole lot of plants in there, and you're just like, oh, this feels
Mm.
too crowded now. It's not like what I would normally do in a garden. So yeah, it's definitely tricky to design and navigate. But yeah,
And
I
was
think I
yours
mean
completely native?
yeah, absolutely, yeah. So and each of the plants were designed to bring wildlife. So that was the whole kind of brief behind it. So yeah, with the pond from entanglements and yeah, I don't know. I just I miss it now. Just talking about it now, it's just like yeah, I don't know. It's cool. It's a very cool experience. So yeah.
And is it and there so you design that because that's the type of project that you like doing, and also the ones that you want to do more of?
Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of started down that path. Like I really love natives, and I think the reason why I love natives so much is they're super hardy, and no matter where you are in Australia, there is a section of plants that will thrive in your climate, hands down. There's different color. Do you know what I mean? Like there is a color palette for that for natives. It brings wildlife. There's so many great things, and I think I've kind of gone down that route of kind of native, purely native. But I think I kind of want to rejig a little bit because I think honing yourself into that little box doesn't quite make sense all the time. It's great when you can do those passion projects and you can build these wildlife gardens, and it's really amazing. And but I think too, being a bit more versatile, like I sort of bring up Peter Donegan and what he does. You can never really quite say, "Oh, that's a Peter Donegan garden," and I think that's a really kind of special thing to do is to make it a Peter Donegan garden, but not, if that makes sense. And there's other people in the industry that have that kind of that knack. They're just like, yeah, this is a well-designed garden. And even though it's not purely native or not, or there's no aspect that is purely them, but it kind of is, if you know what I mean. It's like that feeling of the garden. So I think the next kind of phase of how I design things, I think I want to kind of push the boundaries with different plants and yeah, because I think exotics can be really used for bringing in wildlife and stuff as well. So yeah, I think that's something I'd like to experiment with. I think.
So the projects that have come from MIFGS, are they wanting kind of what you did, or they just like your style, so they just want to do something different, but for you to do it?
Yeah, it's pretty much wildlife stuff, but it's epic. It's some of the stuff that I'm getting through the door at the moment. They're like, yeah, acreage. There was one in Ferny Creek in Dandenong Ranges, I think it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, these guys, they're beautiful clients, and they've just built this massive natural rock swimming pool. I think it's like oh, 15 by 15 or something like that. It's massive. So yeah, it's just so humbling for them to come to me and go, "Hey, can you design our garden?" And it's going to be all pretty much all native and yeah, they've just got this massive space, and you get to just boom, be creative. And do you know what I mean? So creating parts where there's like an Airbnb or there's all these other elements where, yeah, like a yoga pad out the back and immersed in like ferns and all this kind of stuff. Like it's just, yeah, the fact that I get to do that on a daily basis, just I pinch myself every day, man. Like it's absolutely insane. So I feel very blessed that I had the opportunity at MIFGS to create something that I was kind of passionate about in that garden. And yeah, I also feel very blessed to have clients like that come and kind of have a chat and then follow through. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to be very exciting to see that garden come to life.
So have you got someone who you like? Have you got a list of contractors you can recommend yet to build your projects, or how does that work?
Yeah, yeah. Look, and that was something that I really wanted to focus on really quite early on because I know that clients would always say to me, "Can you build it?" That's the number one thing. And I would always say, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, we can build it, we can build it." And I always try and like we'd work it out somewhat, we'd work it out down the track. You know what I mean? So, but no, I made a really good like an effort to meet really good landscapers and that were high quality, that were aligned with kind of the way I worked. So in Ballarat here, I think he's probably one of the best landscapers that I've seen at work. Josh from Greener Landscapes. Some of the work that they do is unreal. So anything that it's sort of out this way, he's on speed dial. Do you know what I mean? So when it comes to Melbourne, it's still tricky. I've got a few, but I'd like to have a couple of guys that I can really rely on and trust. And I think building that relationship is super important because you've got to be really good at communicating and understanding plans and all that kind of stuff, and someone that you can kind of plonk in front of your clients as well and be like, this guy's super professional and I don't have to worry about you. Do you know what I mean? So that's also super important. So but yeah, it's all about building relationships and building it from there.
I saw on your website that you don't have. I don't think it was listed that you're in Ballarat. So is that so that you can get so that you're wherever the design work is, that's where you can be?
Yeah, look, it's tricky because I feel like kind of started the business, even though I started the business in Ballarat, most of my clients from the transition period were still in Melbourne. So and people still kind of knew me in Melbourne. So yeah, I was getting kind of referrals and bits and pieces from Melbourne. So yeah, it is tricky to kind of go, yeah, I'm in Ballarat, but I'm kind of working in Melbourne, but I'm also doing regional Victoria. Do you know what I mean? So it's like it's tricky to work that, especially with the SEO for Google and trying to punch that in. So when someone goes, "Oh, I'm looking for a landscape designer," I'm like in no man's land. Do you know what I mean? So it's tricky to, yeah, trying to navigate that at the moment, trying to rejig my website. And yeah, ideally, I'd like to get a lot more work here in Ballarat, but I think the joy with designing is that you can do one consult and the rest is done via Zoom. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, depending on how you want to run it, whether you do a in-person final presentation or something like that, but it's flexible. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
And going back to when I asked about whether the TAFE taught you how to cost a project and they did that course. So when you started out, did you have a figure and then because you were logging hours, you realised, oh, that's nowhere near enough, you need to increase it?
Yeah.
Or has that changed since you started?
It's interesting you should ask that question actually, because I think it was the very first job that I did as Althaus Landscape Designs, and it was kind of like in the burbs of Ballarat, those kind of new estates, and it's definitely not something that I ever want to kind of go down. But they were beautiful clients, and they wanted a full native garden, and it was just a front garden. I quoted them for the design. I think it was $600, I think. And and I've done this like beautiful design and whatnot. And yeah, they kind of didn't want to pay the rest of the money. And it was just like, what am I doing here, man? Like, how am I going to make money trying to like scrounge for $300 here and $300 there. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it was a bit of a nightmare to begin with. But I think once you start putting a, a monetary value on your time, like an hourly kind of rate, if you will, and how I kind of started it was, yeah, you start the clock and you're sitting in the chair and you're banging this out, and say a design might take 10 hours, just say, and each those next 4 or 5 jobs take around, next one might be 9, whatever, so you can kind of average it out, and that's how I kind of would quote from that point on. So yeah, I think it went from sort of 600 to 1200 to whatever it is now. Do you know what I mean? So, and it can vary, especially the bigger properties, sort of 3,000 to, I don't know, 10 grand sometimes if it's fully detailed. Yeah, so it can be quite extensive.
Yeah, I won in the early days. I was charging $770, and I did a design for someone and presented it to him, and
Yeah.
all right. And he goes, "Where's the 3D images?" I said, I don't do 3D images. I expected for $770 I was going to be getting 3D.
Ooh, right, yeah. I can't even do that wholesale, mate.
I've got a landscape architect in Melbourne, and he would do 3D for $770. I said, I don't think you do have a friend who would do that.
I don't think you do.
Yeah, so there, those people who are paying that, you don't want to be in that market.
And that was again kind of bringing back to that calibration of where you want to kind of sit in the early stages of your business, going, yeah, that was a mistake, and I'm going to change how I quote and how I look and how I come across to the client, and do all those things. And it's just every client I've had since then, you're kind of just adjusting a little bit more. And I think now we're at a stage where it's like, it's kind of a bit streamlined. I kind of can pretty much quote a garden pretty quickly. Yeah, so it's quicker.
And how do you go getting budgets off people and then meeting that? That's very tricky, I assume.
How I do things is I send away so they'll contact me. So it might be a inquiry through the website or however else, and I flick them an email back with a questionnaire, and it's a fairly basic questionnaire, but one of the questions is, what's your budget? And it's not, and I kind of word it in a way, it's just like, I'm not here to rip you off. I need to know the budget so I can design your garden to your budget. That's it. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not, and you've got to make that clear, because I feel like a lot of people are going, if they put down 200,000, I'm going to take every cent of that. Do you know what I mean? But it's not how it is. Like, if you want a good design to your budget, I need to know your budget. So, and I think it's a conversation I found very hard to begin with. But I think when you can word it in a way that's not threatening, the back comes down and they're like, oh, that makes sense. Of course. So, okay, we've got 50 grand. And I was like, cool. Well, you could probably put a small pergola and a couple of plants. Like, that's it. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's just navigating those conversations, and being really open and honest with your clients. I think that's such a big thing. And it's something that I've always tried to portray and then tried to put out there, is just honesty and transparency, because no one wants a shock when it's your hard-earned money. Like, 50 grand is 50 grand, you know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of money to put into a garden, whether you think it or not, you know what I mean? Like, it's so, yeah, you kind of just have to treat your clients with respect, and understand that they worked hard for that money, and yeah, you got to create something that's unique and special for them.
Yeah, I find that's a good thing to do, is to reset every now and then and realize that people are spending a lot of money, and just because you do project, like 30 projects a year, they're only getting one project done in maybe a 10-year period, so it means a lot more to them than what you might think. So
Absolutely,
reassess that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, yeah, when you are doing those when every project is sort of minimum 50 to 150 grand, and you're just like, yeah, cool, let's punch it out. Yeah, the moment you start kind of losing that value of your client's money, that's when you need to recalibrate and be like, no, this is hard earned money, man. Like I don't care what you do for a living, but you've worked for it. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's important to recognize that.
Yeah.
So
Where do you see yourself going? Like, if you did a business plan, what would your goal be? Like 5 years from now?
yeah, look, it's interesting. It's a business plan has been in the back of my mind since the start. I think with MIFGS and everything happening, I haven't had time to kind of sit down and be like, all right, where are we going here? But I think it's kind of at a stage now where I think I'd like to put, like I said, someone on in the next little while. And yeah, look, I'd like to definitely grow it. But by 5 years, I'd want to have something substantial. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd try and potentially maybe put a construction team or something like that on. And I know that's sort of dreaming a bit big, but yeah, I don't know. I think that would be kind of cool, is because that way you can build your gardens. I feel like it's always a bit disheartening. Yeah, like that garden I was telling you about, the $600 garden. I went back and had a look because they wanted to build it themselves, and I had Corton edging, nice rounded, blah blah blah, and Tuscan topping and some really nice natives. And I remember driving past there not so long ago, and they went to Bunnings and got the plastic black. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like that needs to change, man. Like we need to take control of that, and yeah, it's a level of quality control as well, I think. Whereas it's like I'm creating quality designs and gardens, so let's build quality gardens.
Yeah.
So I think that would be, yeah, in the 5 year plan. I think that would be really nice to have a small team that can kind of pull the trigger on small to medium sized kind of gardens. So yeah.
And have you thanked your parents for having such a cool surname as well to name the business? It's one of the coolest business names I've seen, and it's just named after your last name.
Yeah. It's funny. You should say that. We were at I think it was a Landscape Victoria meet and greet, and they were talking about, yeah, your business names and blah blah blah, and they basically said, make sure when you name your business that it's easy for someone to read. And everyone's kind of looked at me and gone, I don't even know what your name is. So I thought to myself, my heart just sunk. I was like, crap, have I messed this up already? Like, so I'm glad you like the name, man. So
Yeah, it seems like it's not one name that you think is someone's surname. It just sounds like a cool business name, I reckon.
awesome. That's good. I'm glad that's probably the most positive feedback I've had from the business name. So no, that's good.
Last question for you is: who do you think would be a good guest to have on the podcast?
Look, I've actually got probably two. I think having my mother-in-law, Len Bazikis from Beanspard Gardens would be. She's a hoot. She's a lot of fun. She's a wealth of knowledge. She's yeah, really good at her job. Like I said, she's a bit of a silent assassin in the industry. Like not many people know her, but yeah, she's really good at her job. And I think the other person would be Nadia from Platolobium. I don't know whether have you had her on before?
No, I've been speaking to her, but yeah,
She's awesome. She's such a really kind person as well. Like, and the gardens that she creates are beautiful. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, you would have seen the one she did for MIFGS this year, and yeah, just unreal. And then what the kind of team that she's got at the moment too is unreal. Like, she's got a team of like six, and it's just like she's one of those people that have like understood that she can't do everything, so she's just handpicked these people that have just made her whole business and team so strong. It's unreal. It's really quite impressive to talk to her about business and the industry. So yeah,
Yeah, fascinating.
yeah,
All right. Thank you so much for coming on, Daniel. I really appreciate your time, and it's pretty exciting to see where you go to next and see like sort
yeah,
of start following someone in the early stages of their career. So good luck with it.
yeah. Thank you very much, Joel, and thanks so much for having me on, man. Like, I don't know. To me, you're yeah, running this podcast and having something like this for someone like myself who's really quite early on in the landscape career is so precious. So keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome, man. Thank you.